for listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Good morning and welcome to the Business Hour. I'm Ron Comacho, your host. And today's business at hand is the business of leveraging music to help people achieve a better balance in their life, if you will. We've heard for decades that there are benefits from music and music engagement that have helped people with a variety of conditions in their life, whether it be a stress or some physical ailment, to simply live a more stress-free existence. That's easy for me to say. And today I'm very, very pleased to have the executive director of Alchemy Sky, Jaye, as our guest to tell us more about how Alchemy Sky is leveraging music to enrich the lives of veterans in particular, but also some other folks, and he'll be telling us about that. Welcome to the business, Jaye.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for having me.
Jaye, let's talk about the scope of what you do at Alchemy Sky, or basically what your mission is, and take us back to the beginning of that mission and how you created Alchemy Sky.
Sure. So Alchemy Sky our mission is to bring the healing power of music to those who need it. And we saw a need in terms of the ability for people to express themselves and process their experiences, and avenues or vehicles to do so. So we think music can really help people in areas like anxiety, depression, PTSD, some other physical challenges like Parkinson's. So we facilitate and fund programs in and around Atlanta that helps people using the power of music.
Take us back to when it was that you thought that music could be used in this way. Were there other significant contributors to the concept? Is this a very much a Jaye concept that you cultivated all on your own? And at some point we'll talk about your background in music, but tell us about how you came to see that music could be used in this way. Even before you formed the group, you must have had some perception that I've seen the wonders of music in other healing areas, and I think I can marry music with veterans, because veterans is a major focus, right?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been a musician most of my adult life, and I have used music through a lot of challenging and dark moments for me. So I've always had music as kind of a companion throughout my journey. And I was in corporate America at Verizon Wireless, and kind of my big bang moment was I wanted to do a service project. And friend of a friend introduced me to the executive director of a shelter called Covenant House, which is down in the city of Atlanta. And this particular shelter helps get teenage at-risk teens, sexually trafficked teens off the street and into a safe environment. And so I was still working at Verizon Wireless and driving down to the city. And throughout those about 16 weeks, we ended up writing and recording a song at the shelter. And just the significance of that, and just the way those teens pulled together to validate their own voices, their own truth, the amount of collaboration that was going on in the midst of this very, intense shelter. I mean, if you're a teenager and you're in a shelter, you're under a lot of stress, and you've probably experienced a lot of trauma. And so we ended up writing and recording a song inside the shelter, and the caseworkers, every time we would come out of one of our sessions, you could just knock them over with a feather, because they were like, this is amazing how they're pulling together and expressing themselves. And that was in 2013. And I started to really think about the fact that, music has a lot of power to pull people together and connect not only each other, but also connect ourselves with feelings and experiences that maybe we couldn't get to otherwise.
No question about it. Music has helped a variety of people, again, in times of stress or other physical ailments, undergo whatever that period of time was with less stress, and also to just open up, to kind of let your hair down and immerse yourself in music. What kind of programs? I know you have the focus on the Veterans Music Project, but what kind of other programs fall under the umbrella of Alchemy Sky? And I might ask you to go back and explain the name even before you tell us about any programs. Tell us about why you chose Alchemy Sky.
So the term Alchemy Sky, so you can think of it, the definition of alchemy is a transformation of sorts. So back, I imagine hundreds of years ago, apparently there were people that said they could turn lead to gold, which I'm not sure that really worked. But metaphorically, I think the term alchemy is accurate for what music can do. I have seen music both personally and professionally transform pain into consciousness, transform darkness into light. So I like the term alchemy. I think it exists in all of us. I think the ability to transform to a better place or to actualize to a better version of ourselves is kind of important going through this world, and I think music can help a lot of people in that endeavor. Sky is kind of the limit. Sky's the limit in terms of what music can do for people. So that's how we came up with Alchemy Sky.
That's a great name. I too believe that modern alchemists are folks who integrate sometimes seemingly disparate parts, fuse them together as the early alchemists did, and who were more chemistry focused, and now chemistry as a metaphor for different dimensions of your life is a very appropriate term. And then the whole notion that sky's the limit.
I mean,
love it.
Perhaps it's a social alchemy or a cultural alchemy. I have had so many experiences with music. I'll give you just a quick one. Is that years ago I used to go up to an open mic in Johns Creek, and it was a great open mic, and it was Wednesday nights, and people would sit in, so you might have a piano player or somebody who plays harmonica or somebody who wants to sing, and you don't necessarily know these people. And so you go up there and you say, okay, we're gonna sing Drift Away. It's in the key of G. All right, count it in. And you have this experience with people that you don't know, and you make a connection. And I always thought when you do your 3 or 4 songs, and I always thought when I got off, when we were done with the songs, I wondered if I would have met those people in any other way. And perhaps, we didn't vote for the same people, or perhaps we don't have seemingly a lot in common, but now we have forged this connection.
Yeah, that's definite social alchemy.
And you could kind of say it's social alchemy. So
what was the name of this place in Alpharetta?
It's called Abbott's.
There is a restaurant, Alto Valley's, that has an open mic at night, and I was wondering, they happened to be guests on the program because I wanted to talk about a restaurant which had this music component and has for many years, and it's interesting that in this northern suburb of Atlanta, you would have a couple of them, maybe even more than those two, because someone mentioned to me another restaurant club up there, and you usually associate that with the inner city, but I like that they have the dimension outside the city. So now tell us about, are there formalized programs, or is the primary formalized program the Veterans Music Project?
No, we have a couple of different programs that we do, and we like to go on site So whether it be a nursing home or the VA, but right now we're partnering with a business from out of Roswell, Georgia, called the Chord Center. And so we're partnering with them to facilitate a choir for those who are living with Parkinson's. And the Chord Center has done a fantastic job in terms of growing that choir. They just had a recital, or a gig, if you will, on June 23rd at a Baptist church in Roswell. And they did songs from Ireland, and it was a very, very powerful experience.
That would seem to be a great example of vocal alchemy.
Absolutely. And again, bringing people together kind of within the embrace of songs. It was just wonderful to hear them perform, and the fellowship that follows afterwards, right? You're drinking coffee, and you're talking to new people, and it was just a fantastic experience.
What would you say, and I want to really drill down to the benefits to some of the veterans you're working with, but to the folks with Parkinson's, and you mentioned one, I mean, just socializing, meeting other people. But what are some of the benefits that you think come with music, in some cases being introduced into the lives of some, reintroduced into the lives of others, and then maybe there were a few people that just music didn't really matter to very much, and all of a sudden now it does matter.
I think music is what I have found to be the most common denominator of the human experience. So I think, to your point, there are people that may not think of it as much that way. But if for the people that I've talked to, there always is usually a memory or an experience that's associated with a song. So it could be the song that you danced with, with your mom at your wedding, or it could be, for me, it's every time I hear James Taylor, I think of my father, because he and I love James Taylor. So I think the ability to bring people together and foster those connections is very powerful. And to your point, I think it can sneak up on people sometimes, and it can surprise them in terms of how powerful it can be.
Now, we're going to be taking a break here in a moment, but when we come back, I'm going to have you tell us more about the Veterans Music Project, and then we'll even talk a little bit about some of the specific veterans. We might not necessarily name names, but you've worked with some individuals that have really embraced this, and it's become a significant part of their lives. We'll be talking about that with Jaye Budd. We're taking a break, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Struggling to cope with the disease of addiction? If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. Their doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
45 years of experience is behind the most trusted name in auto transportation. Passport Transport, the first and finest today. That's why Passport Transport is the preferred auto transport for major auto manufacturers, concours, museums, tours, and collectors, and should be your choice from across the state to across the country. When you have the need, go to PassportTransport.com and enjoy the peace of mind referenced experience will give you. Passport Transport.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back to the Business Hour. We're here with Jaye Budd, the Executive Director of Alchemy Sky. And Jaye was telling us a little bit about how he conceived of the Alchemy Sky organization, with a major focus being on the Veterans Music Project And Jay, tell us about why you saw it as a critical dimension. And you touched on this, but tell us more about why you felt that there was a void to be filled by engaging veterans in songwriting, in producing the music, and in performing, and the early stages of how it evolved to eventually going into the studio and producing. One of the very first songs, if I'm not mistaken, was "A Just Fire."
Yes.
Okay, we're going to talk about that. We'll even talk about some of the lyrics, but we're going to even play a little bit of it a little bit later. Tell us about that evolution. You started working with veterans. Where did you have the contact with the veterans? How did you grow it into a more formal veterans music project?
So one of our partners is Metro Music Therapy of Georgia, and they have helped us on a number of different projects, including the first one, which was at the Covenant House. And they introduced us to the VA, the CLC, which is their community living center, which is their nursing home in the big VA Medical Center campus off of Claremont Road. And so we were there, and we subcontracted or partnered with Metro Music Therapy of Georgia. And every week we would go and have music therapy sessions with veterans who were living there. And so that was our first program that we developed for veterans. And as we got farther into the veteran community, and I think hopefully everybody knows the stats, and they're very serious and very tragic in terms of every day in this country, 21 veterans commit suicide. And if you are a veteran, you are twice as likely to take your own life versus being a civilian. So the ability for us to care for our veterans after they have sacrificed so much for our country is extremely important. And what we started to see is that there was an opportunity to deliver a non-traditional method of therapy. And so originally what we heard at the VA a lot of times from the recreational therapists and the nurses is they were convinced that a lot of the veterans that we worked with probably would not have expressed themselves in more of a traditional therapeutic setting. So they saw the value almost immediately in terms of people opening up, people starting to express themselves, tell stories. So I remember one story where we asked a gentleman who was a Vietnam veteran what his favorite song was. He said, "Sitting on the Dock of a Bay." We played it, we sang it, and then the music therapist asked him, "What do you remember the first time you heard that song?" And all of a sudden now, he's telling a story. And what we were getting our feedback is, I'm not sure that gentleman would have done the same thing if somebody just asked him point blank about Vietnam. So right away, we kind of saw the power of it in terms of giving veterans a different way to express themselves and process their experiences. From there, we decided we also wanted to help post 9/11 veterans, and that is when we came up with the Veterans Music Project, and we walked veterans through the process of writing and recording a song.
I want to read a quick quote here from a Marine. In this case, it was a woman who is a Marine. She wrote that writing about it helps to get the feelings out, the emotions out, and then when you have other people listening to it and they feel the same way about it, then you kind of feel vindicated that you have a reason for feeling the way you feel. And so that takes us back to this notion that music can strike a chord, if you will, in people. Take them to another place, a better place, that allows them to open up. And this Marine, is this someone who, was it a one-time opportunity for her to work with Alchemy Sky, or has it been an ongoing relationship? Tell us about that.
So she was in the first Veterans Music Project, and we are inviting the veterans from our first project to the second project in the fall. We really do want to create this idea of an extended family so that people continually know that they can collaborate and connect and process through music. The other thing that struck me deeply is how selfless veterans are. So she wanted to be a light for other veterans, and so her vulnerability and her truth lights a path for other veterans who might be struggling. And I always thought I was just deeply honored to be around people like that who are brave enough to kind of express their vulnerability and their truth, but also want to pull people along and help other people with their art. So we want to make sure that we invite our veterans from the first Veterans Music Project to the second one to kind of build that momentum.
Yeah, a lot of people forget that people who allow themselves or who are willing to become part of the military, in many cases are really giving kinds of people. I mean, we're talking about a violent activity to become a part of, especially if you're in combat zones. But nevertheless, that starts with people wanting to protect freedom and to essentially be selfless in serving the country. And those same selfless characteristics are there following the war, but they just may have been taken off path, if you will. And I see that what your program does is help people to get in touch with their feelings, again, for some measure of stress reduction, and to get back on to a path of healing. Here's another quote from an Army soldier. "Music is a dominant role in my life. It helps with my PTSD and with my therapy." So that as an adjunct or an additional dimension to PTSD therapy, and I can imagine that it's extremely useful. In fact, we had a licensed clinical social worker on the program a couple of years ago, who I want to bring this to his attention because he might have some folks that you could work with, and I think he would see that there is tremendous benefits. Here's another quote. "It allows me to express my writing skills as well as my love for music and wrap it up in this nice ball of therapy. It was an outlet for me to create and get in touch with my feelings, and I may not have known were there and put them. I may not have known where they were and put them in a way that hopefully other people could connect to." And so I think this Air Force woman is talking maybe very specifically about the Adjust Fire production. Is that
Yes.
right?
And I think to your point, we had a mental health professional explain it to me, explain it to us this way, and this made sense to me, is that and a lot of times the veterans we're working with are medically and honorably discharged from the military. And how the term that this mental health professional used was the idea that identities get fragmented when they come home. And so they have a profound sense of duty and service, but they have a harder time plugging in and connecting to that identity when they're discharged from the military. And so they still want to identify with it. It is still a huge part of their personality and their psyche, but they don't have a direct connection with it anymore. And so what music in this project does is it allows them to bring that identity into their present day and talk about some of the experiences that they've had. And it there's a sense of wholeness, I think, when they write and they record. And I think that's been very powerful. And so this song we're talking about, Adjust Fire, was the first song that we recorded with a group of 9 veterans, and we also hired a music producer who was in the Army for 10 years. So that is the song we're talking about this morning.
Yeah, Adjust Fire is a work of poetry set to music, it would seem, and you're just helping veterans capture a broad range of feelings, which are cloaked in confusion, maybe, and in the first combination of verses for Adjust Fire, I'd like you to read that first. You would certainly be a little more in touch with it, and maybe even read it in a rhythm that was closer to the music itself, which we'll be playing in a little bit. But read that first part of Adjust Fire.
So it's Adjust Fire, never getting tired, gotta keep it moving. Downrange, too long, time to bring it on home. Gotta call my wife when I get off, I'm feeling all alone. So tired, sleepy, but still wide awake. Bombs drop, soul frozen, feeling myself shake. Just got married, gotta get home, restart my life. Gotta remember when I get back how to kiss my wife. Hands numb, heart beating, crazy banging like a drum. Hope my wife accepts the man I have become.
And there's a lot in that. I mean, there's a full range of emotions, and in fact, I'm going to have you. Well, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we'll actually play the music, and maybe we'll even review some of those lyrics again after you hear some of the music. We're here with Jaye Budd, the executive director of Alchemy Sky, which is using music to help a variety of folks, but with a focus on veterans whose lives are becoming less stressful with the support of Alchemy Sky. We'll be back to talk with Jaye Budd right after this break.
Quick Stakes, that's Q-U-I-K Stakes, are not just for surveyors. They are great for family and community gardens. Go online to www.quickstake.com or contact your local land surveying supply dealer and get you a box of Quick Stakes. You'll love them every year when you plant your garden. Again, that's Quick Stakes, Q-U-I-K Stakes, the truly preferred way to stake and identify what's in your garden now.
Whether cruising the strip in a 57 Chevy or taking the family on a vacation in a 71 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, you need to tune in to Classic Cars with Steve Ronaldo and Jim Weber every Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. on americaswebradio.com.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients, dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down docs4patientcarefoundation.org. That's DOCS, the number 4, patientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Adjust fire, never getting tired, gotta keep it moving. Downrange, too long, time to bring it on home. Gotta call my wife, when I get off I'm feeling all alone. So tired, sleepy, but still wide awake. Bombs dropped, soul frozen, feeling myself shake. Just got married, gotta get home, restart my life. Gotta remember when I get back how to kiss my wife. Hands numb, heart beating, crazy banging like a drum. Hope my wife accepts the man I have become.
You can call me a spy because my man dirty secrets. Disguises I've used hide my many faces. Under my care, 3 depend on me. And my main squeeze, he's the one I really need. There's nothing else for me to do but to show and prove. You see, it can't keep whitewashing everything we do. Show me that black girl magic, give us our credit due. Love and affection straight from the heart, yo, my aim is true.
I just fine, never getting tired, gotta keep it moving. I just fine, never getting tired, gotta keep it moving. I just fine, never getting tired, gotta keep it moving. I just fine, never getting tired, gotta keep it moving. I just fine, never getting tired, gotta keep it moving. I just fine, never getting tired, gotta keep it moving. I just fine, never getting tired, gotta keep it.
You just heard a portion of A Just Fire, which is a recently released production of the Veterans Music Project of the Alchemy Sky organization. And Jay, how many people were involved in writing it and performing it? And then we're going to talk a little bit about the release project and a key partner with you in the release. But you transitioned into a music producer, which you might have been previously, of sorts.
Yep. Well, we hired a music producer who, was Marcus McCreary, who really brought all this out from the veterans. He's a 10-year Army veteran, and actually the Wounded Warrior Project referred him to us and said, hey, you might want to take a look at Marcus. And he was, talk about an alchemist. Marcus did a great job. I was really kind of the roadie.
Yeah. Well, in some sense, just like in a movie production, you have producers and directors who are more hands-on.
Right.
You still have executive producers who have their hand in the production. And in that sense, you were an executive producer. But tell us about how you found Marcus McCreary and how you decided which of the veterans, or maybe he did, but how you decided who could write and who could sing and who was going to be involved in the production.
Well, so Wounded Warrior Project helped us find Marcus, and we really wanted to make it a no pressure, no stress situation. So we didn't, everybody made the band, right? So people who had an interest and a passion in music, I think we started with about 12 or 13 veterans, and then it kind of whittled down to 9. And it was amazing in the sense that the creativity and the artistry was already there. Quite frankly, we probably could have recorded 3 or 4 songs. So we met the veterans where they were. We also didn't want anybody stressing about if they had to perform musically, because all we wanted to do is give them a safe, fun, collaborative environment so they could express their voices. And I'm a little bit biased, but I think Atlanta is the greatest music city in the country. So what's great about it is if we needed someone to help us make a track or form a beat, this is the city that literally can provide whatever we need musically.
Right. In fact, one studio
Right.
stepped up, and tell us about that.
So we're very passionate about trying to empower veterans to help other veterans. So as Marcus is a 10-year Army veteran, our music producer, we also found a professional recording studio in Atlanta called Soul Asylum Studio that's owned by a veteran. And so what we really want to do is create this network, this support infrastructure in the music industry, but also have veterans lead the way, helping other veterans. And Soul Asylum Studio it's a fantastic studio. They were really patient and wonderful with our veterans, because remember, the veterans we work with aren't professional artists, they're not professional musicians. And going into a professional recording studio can be a little intimidating, when you step in the vocal booth and the engineer gives you the 4 count and it's like, okay, you're up. But they had so much patience and made it a lot of fun for the veterans to come in and record their tracks. It was a wonderful experience, and we'll be back there in the fall.
The reoccurring phrase that you hear throughout this piece, a just fire, never getting tired, got to keep it moving. Tell us, were you involved in helping folks figure out the title?
So how the project kind of sets up is we met, weekly for about 2 hours. I think on Monday nights is where we met. And we have a workbook that we walk the veterans through in terms of writing exercises, figuring out how they want the song to sound. So asking them, is it Florida Georgia Line? Does it sound like Jay-Z? Just to get kind of a start and a foundation. And as we go through that, we begin to refine different hooks. So they had all sorts of different ideas for what we wanted the hook to be. And so what happens is each week I'm writing everything down, I'm taking notes. And then the next week, I would call them meeting minutes, but what I would do is I would hand out what we worked on the week before. And you just continue to distill this. And a just fire is a military term in terms of changing your aim. And that throughout, I would say, the first 3 or 4 weeks, that kept percolating, that kept popping up. And so what happens is you just kind of keep boiling it down and keep refining it, and that's basically the hook that they came up with.
Well, it's a really remarkable metaphor because in the production of the song, you were adjusting fire.
Absolutely.
And never getting tired and keeping it moving. I want to have you read another portion of this, the section which begins, "Y'all don't know what you can't see."
Y'all don't know what you can see. The IEDs, bullets, RPGs, the pain, the meds, the therapy, the cost of freedom. It ain't free. So don't judge a book before you read. Turn the page. This is the history of me.
Lot in that short musical stanza. You have had a couple of supportive partners, along with Marcus McCrary and Soul Asylum. It was coincidental, the way we learned about you actually was through Alan Jones, the owner of Hi-Fi Buys, a guy who has a big heart and wanted to be supportive, and at the core of his life is music. And so tell us about the release event and how that came together, and
Absolutely.
Start off with how you met Alan Jones.
Right. So we had a mutual friend, and she said, you need to meet Alan because I think he's as passionate about music as you are. And Alan is a fantastic gentleman. He is on our board and is the owner of Hi-Fi Buys, which is a fantastic consumer electronics store in Buckhead. And so as we got closer to releasing the song, Alan had an idea and said, why don't we just do the celebration in the store? And it was such a powerful experience. The veterans came with their significant others and their spouses, and Alan opened up his whole store. It was fantastic, and the equipment and the gear and the speakers and everything that Alan has. When veterans walked through the door, they heard a Just Fire, and there were times where a veteran would walk through the door with his wife, and everybody the both of them would start to tear up, because not only is it a fantastic song, but it's coming through on equipment and speakers that are just absolutely the best. So that was a very powerful moment in terms of when we were listening to the song and it would get to the veterans part, everybody would just kind of, you could see they were kind of hugging and kind of giving high fives. And a lot of the significant others that they brought were very surprised in a good way. Like, I didn't know this was in you. I didn't know you could express yourself that way. And it was just an amazing experience. And Alan also had another brilliant idea, is to invite some of his customers to the celebration. So then what happens with that is you start to push the song into parts of our community that maybe otherwise wouldn't have connected with it. And so now you have people meeting each other that maybe wouldn't have met in another walk of life. And they're talking about the song and also honoring the veteran by saying, hey, that was an amazing line, or how did you come up with that beat? And so it was this wonderful community experience that we're celebrating the veterans and what they've done for our country.
You know, I mentioned earlier how people willing to enlist and become a part of our military effort, whether they're in combat zones or not, are oftentimes much more giving than people realize, willing to give their lives in some cases, but giving people, and in this case, giving to the country and in service of the country. And I think a lot of listeners can relate to this, but there's oftentimes not a lot talked about. And that is non-veterans, non-military, wanting to help veterans. And that's something that you had mentioned to me before was, you know, you weren't a part of the military, but you always were thinking about what can I do to help these men and women. And, you know, I oftentimes feel the same way because I was not military. You know, what can I do to be supportive? And in some sense, this show, this very show, is you and I being supportive of people who went and selflessly gave of their time and their hearts and their bodies and in some cases their lives in support of freedom. And, you know, the rest of us, you know, we are groping for ways to be supportive. And I think that this approach that you've taken, and in some sense, Ellen Jones, I'm sure, feels the same way. And I know that the station owner and manager, the general manager here, David Moxley, is a guy who is a veteran, but who also wants to give back to other veterans. Tell us about how you might see Alchemy Sky evolving. You said that you could have recorded another song or two. Do you see music production down the road as a more formalized part of what you do? I know that you make visitations, not so much at the VA as you did in the beginning, but there are live performances. How do you see Alchemy Sky evolving?
I think, and to your point about...
And you know what? I'm going to apologize because we're going to need to take a break, and I'm going to let you gather your thoughts on that. We're here with Jaye Budd, the executive director of Alchemy Sky, and we've been talking about a host of things that Alchemy Sky is doing to help a lot of different folks, but with a focus on veterans, lead less stressful lives. We'll be back with Jaye right after this break.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. Their doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
Hi, this is Steve Ronaldo, host of the Classic Car Show on America's Web Radio. Just talking to you about antique car insurance. I think that if you're looking for the best coverage for your classic car, consider J.C. Taylor Insurance. They've been my insurer for years in this hobby and have the top rating of all of the insurance companies in the hobby. When you get ready for insurance, call J.C. Taylor or visit jctaylor.com on the Internet.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. Get a pen and paper. Write down www.docsforpatientcarefoundation.org. That's www.docsforpatientcarefoundation.org. Go to our site and please make a generous tax-deductible donation and join the fight today. Thank you.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back to the Business Hour. I'm Ron Comacho, your host, and we're here with Jaye Budd, the Executive Director of Alchemy Sky, and we've been talking about what Alchemy Sky is doing to help people reduce stress in their lives, or in many cases, you might even say self-actualize by getting in touch with certain feelings, getting those feelings out, and reducing stress and getting those feelings out through music. Jaye himself is a musician, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But before the break, I wanted Jaye to share with us a little more about how you were looking at the future of Alchemy Sky.
So we think there's a real opportunity to bring people together with helping write songs, whether it be we want to continue our work with veterans, but the experience we had at Hi-Fi Buys with our release party really showed us the potential, which is we can bring a lot of different people from our community into kind of Alchemy Sky's family to help with the writing, the production, and then the celebration of these songs. So I don't think you don't need to be a professional musician. We've had a lot of volunteers that, to the discussion point we had earlier, want to help veterans, but maybe they don't know how to kind of integrate with some of the support structure. We want to be that support structure. So whether it be people that want to, everybody from people who want to donate to support the project, or people that want to help write, or people that want to help take photography, or people that want to help blog about the journey, highlight our veterans on social media, tell their story. And we think we can really expand this into a new support structure for veterans using music and everybody in our community who is passionate about music.
Well, and it's very timely in that the recent program, and I'm sorry I can't tell you the name of the program, don't know what network it's on, you might know, but the program which highlights people's helping individuals to become writers and composers.
I've seen that, I think.
There's a mainstream program on one of the major networks, and it might be that you can link with them and supply them with veterans who would be worthy of that program, taking them from the level that Alchemy Sky, the platform that Alchemy Sky has, and being a source of talent, if you will, to them, so that they're getting it refined even beyond what you can do, and that might be good exposure for Alchemy Sky. Money, an important part of what any nonprofit does is try to raise money, and you have specific uses for contributions. How does someone get in touch with Alchemy Sky?
They can check us out online at alchemysky.org. To your point, we are raising money for this new Veterans Music Project and want to be able to record at least 2 songs. One of the things we learned from our first Veterans Music Project is that we would love to be able to offer 2 different genres. So we'd love to do a country and western one, add that to our library. So again, we're giving veterans more opportunities to express themselves. So you can check us out at alchemysky.org, or we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just search on Alchemy Sky Foundation.
Are some of the veterans you're working with, do you see them as sources of ongoing participation, and whose roles might be expanded? I mean, not that you're going to become a major employer of veterans, but you can eventually get to a point where you're well enough funded, hopefully, that you might engage one or two of them. Is that something you've thought about?
We have. So we have in our business proposal for, Veterans Music Project 2.0, having two veterans and bringing someone back from the original program and then having Marcus lead the way. We think this could provide an opportunity for veterans to not only help other veterans, but also have an employment opportunity.
Let's turn to you for a moment as we start to close out the program. You started off in high school, if I'm not correct, as a musician, as a guitar player, and you've managed to integrate this passion for music. And I mentioned to you off air that, one of the sub-themes of this program is professionals becoming self-actualized, and that one of the things that we share with listeners, particularly young listeners who are not even sure of what kind of path to take to any given profession, to any career, and who are groping for ways to integrate interests and aptitudes and passions, and that's what you've done. I mean, that's what you've done. You've become more self-actualized. I don't see you as someone who thinks you've achieved the perfect balance, but someone who's become more self-actualized. Tell us about how you've managed to integrate these interests and aptitudes.
It's I don't know who is credited with this quote, but it is seldom straight but mostly forward is kind of the thing. Music's always been a passion, but it took years for that passion to kind of actualize into something that I could do for a living. So you may not be able to see it in a 6-month window. I also like the quote, you kind of have to live your way into the answer. So as I worked at Verizon Wireless for 13 years, I never, my passion for music never waned. And so I was looking for ways to kind of push that passion into something that I could do every day. But it took several years. And for me, that big bang moment was doing the service project at Covenant House. But I think you have to start with something that, you would do for free, and then figure out how to actualize that into a living.
And for a lot of people, following their passion takes them in a direction where their earnings might not be as good as they otherwise were in a corporate or entrepreneurial situation, but where you can wake up and feel good about what you do, feel better about what you do, and in some sense you're sacrificing a certain lifestyle to focus on something where you're integrating your heart and your head and just feeling better about what you do with your life.
Absolutely. And it is, ideally you want to be able to blend it so that you have a certain amount of your passions, but also, a certain amount of ability to pay bills. And I just don't think, a 6-month or a 12-month window is realistic to do something like that. It certainly wasn't for me. I had to kind of take the long way. So, and I think in some sense that makes it a little bit more fulfilling in terms of, the mountain that you're climbing. But I also try to incorporate every part of my journey forward. So all the training and all the experience that I learned at Verizon Wireless, I carry that with me now. So I don't think those are disparate worlds. I think one helps the other.
There's no doubt about it that the range of management skills that you acquire when you're working for a major corporation of any kind, or even if you started your own business, certainly along the way, most entrepreneurs start to acquire more and more management skills. But as the executive director of any nonprofit, you can't help but rely on that skill set. And the other thing that I want to mention is that you and I also talked about how very often, and most often, when you have these seemingly disparate interests and aptitudes or passions, hobbies, if you will, you don't know how to integrate them. No one can tell you, well, Jay, I think that there's a nonprofit foundation in your future, and that is an executive director of an organization that can integrate music with helping people reduce stress in their lives, be in touch with their feelings, and maybe work with veterans.
I probably would have lost that bet.
Yeah. And I think I shared with you that I was a guy who studied pre-med and psychology, and also happened to take a lot of film and photography or media and some environmental studies courses. And I sure as heck didn't know how to pull all that together. No one was able to advise me and tell me that, well, in your future, maybe you'll do some of it professionally. You'll still rely on certain social, psychological skills in the operations of a business, in my case, marketing, and then the use of skills to communicate with people. But also I might pursue the environmental studies part of it as a nonprofit, as a volunteer orientation. And what you've done is pull together some things that were meaningful to you, integrating your heart and your head, and that's what I try to do.
It is what you just described is also seldom straight, but always forward, right? So
No
it's
question.
the ability to stay open and say, I'm not sure where this fits, but I'm going to make sure I put it in my backpack.
And we hope that listeners can understand that sometimes it's a circuitous route.
It was for me.
That will get you there.
It still is.
Jay, I want to thank you for doing what you do. I know that you are making a difference, leveraging music in the lives of many, particularly veterans. So thank you for that, and thank you for taking time to come on the Business Hour.
Very, very grateful that you had us. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Business Hour here at America's Web Radio. We're on Fridays from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, USA. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on the radio and internet next week.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Hi, this is Jaye with the Alchemy Sky Foundation, and we're in Atlanta, Georgia at Soul Asylum Studio with our Veterans Music Project. We're recording our new single, Adjust Fire, which will be out early 2019. This video documents our journey in the studio.
Well, especially with this particular song, it let me express myself, my experiences in the military, especially being deployed.
Adjust fire, never getting tired, gotta keep it moving. Downrange, too long, time to bring it on home. Gotta call my wife, when I get off I'm feeling all alone. So tired, sleepy, but still wide awake. Bombs dropped, soul frozen, feeling myself shake.
It actually drew things out that I really didn't know I was feeling all the way. Because the song I wrote is really a story about how I felt when I was in Iraq.
Except the man I have become.
You can call me a spy because my many secrets, disguises I've used hide my many faces. Under my care, 3 depend on me.
At first, I didn't think I was going to be able to put it out there because some things are personal and you don't want the world to know about your personal struggles.
Keep whitewashing everything we do. Show me that black girl magic. Give us our credit due. Love and affection straight from the heart. Yo, my aim is true.
Adjust fire, never getting tired, gotta keep it moving. Adjust fire, never getting tired.
It gave me a chance to write about, things that were happening to me in a daily life and things that were military and civilian based. And it gave me a chance to be creative, which was what I was really looking for. And it just kind of gave me a chance to have fun.
Adjust
like a sports shot. Stay ready, never get ready. Didn't hit a lot at 300 meters, but I cut down every fast Freddy.
You know, as veterans, sometimes we isolate. Myself, I isolate, so it was great to get out and meet a great group of people.
My past works, I adjust fine, never getting tired, gotta keep it moving. I blacked out yesterday, homes, gotta keep it coolin'. I ain't taking no more pills, bro, I can't do it. I just fired and refired and keep it moving.
Deep in depression, I know I've been stressing. The world has gone.
It's designed to bring hope because we're saving lives with the music we're creating, and we're reaching the veterans who suffer from PTSD and traumatic TBIs, memory loss. We're all tuned to a frequency that nobody else understands.
The man coming to our land. They on a mission. No, they've been wishing. Life's just out of hand. Adjust fire, recalibrate. Saving lives before it's too late.
Adjust fire, never getting tired.
Getting to write and help everyone else with the writing as well, it was just freeing to see some people letting out, you know, what they're going through and what they're thinking about.
Y'all don't know what you can't see. The IEDs, bullets, RPGs, the pain, the meds, the therapy, the cost of freedom, it ain't free.
Music is a very dominant role in my life. It helps with my PTSD and my therapy, and not having music would just make life suck all the way around, you know.
This is the history of me.
At times it's hard where to start to try to make it better, but deep inside I run and hide those demons. They haunt me.
This project seemed to allow me to express my writing skills as well as my love for music and wrap it up in this nice ball of therapy.
To get better.
Looking at Mia, knowing how I'ma need her.
Well, the whole thing is when you come together with other veterans, you're able to open up and express yourself.
Dealing with felonies and misdemeanors.
And it's different because, you know, they don't understand the grind, the grit that you have to get up through, and honestly, the selflessness that you got to push to make sure everybody else is in line first besides you.
The earth always knows what I've been through. I don't know what these thoughts will turn to.
Coming here, they actually gave me confidence that I didn't think I had, you know, and yeah, it's been an ultimate positive experience for me.
I keep it moving.
And to be able to put it to music and make it something good, you know, like take your feelings that are negative and then put them into music, which people will like. It's like I'm turning it around, you know, so that's really freeing. That's why, you know, I like the music project.
Writing about it helps get the feelings out, the emotions out. And then when you have other people listening to it and they feel the same way about it, then you kind of feel vindicated that you have a reason for feeling the way you feel. Because there's other people who feel the same way who couldn't get it out. And you got it out for yourself plus whoever is identifying with you.
I can write. Definitely I can write. But sing? Nah. But coming here, they actually gave me confidence that I didn't think I had.
This music project was something that I would look forward to doing. It was, even though I had to drive a long way to get there, it was always something that I knew I would enjoy once I got there. And it was an outlet for me to create and to get in touch with feelings I may not have known were there, and to put them in a way that hopefully other people could connect to it as well.
Meeting some great people, the staff at Alchemy Sky, just everybody was great to work with.
I'd like to thank the Alchemy Sky Foundation and the Wounded Warrior Project for putting this all together. The people involved with this are fantastic, and thank my family and my friends, anybody who's going to listen to this track might appreciate it. We sure do appreciate you, and help it go somewhere. We thank you so much. God bless y'all. Have a good one.